there, thanks for tuning into Duckbricks. I'm Chris, and today we are kicking off a brand new top 10 LEGO minifigure series, taking a look at the best minifigures from pretty much every single year of LEGO. We'll be breaking this up into two different categories. For this video, we'll be taking a look at the top 10 best non-collectible minifigure figures from 2020. So any figure that was not a collectible minifigure in the blind bag packs is fair game. And the reason why I'm breaking this up is that typically some of the best minifigures are actually found in the collectible minifigure series. It's almost unfair to compare them against the standard retail set figures because the CMFs get a lot of budget put into new prints, arm printing, leg printing, dual molding, all sorts of fancy stuff the collectible minifigs get that we don't really see in the normal figures. So that's why I'm splitting this up. Next time we do a video on this for 2020, we will be taking a look at the top 10 best collectible minifigures, so don't worry, those are coming, but for now, we're just going to be taking a look at the best figures from the retail sets. Now again, I do want to state that this is of course just my opinion, and I do want to hear yours. Let me know down in the comments below if you agree, if you disagree, and which ones are your favorites from the year of 2020. And this series will actually be summarizing minifigures from almost every single year of LEGO, and all of this will culminate in the best minifigures ever video, which will be coming far in the future once I cover the best figures out of every single year. But so without further ado, let's just jump right in and check out number 10.
Alright, so starting off with number 10 here, we have a minifigure making a return to the LEGO lineup after several years. This is Ahsoka Tano, featuring her appearance from the latest final season of Star Wars The Clone Wars animated series. The last time we got an official LEGO Ahsoka Tano minifigure was all the way back in 2016, to coincide with the Star Wars Rebels series depicting an adult version of Ahsoka. And this time they're depicting a slightly older version than the previous ones from the Clone Wars, hence why she has the adult headpiece, as well as a full amount of detail on the torso and legs. Now this minifigure is number 10 on the list because a lot of people feel like it is fairly mixed. You see, specifically the montrails on the headpiece are a little bit too long for what the figure is actually supposed to have in universe, and there's a reason for that. You see, this particular headpiece mold was actually created for the Shock T minifigure all the way back many years ago for the Clone Wars series, and they've basically just reused it for the more adult version of Twi'leks ever since. Unfortunately, because this is kind of an in-between version that's not quite a teenager but not quite an adult either, the montrails really should not be this long, but given that LEGO clearly did not have the budget to make a new mold for just having a sort of mid-piece for the montrails, I think this is probably the best they could have gotten. To me, what makes this figure special is the fact that we're actually getting it after so many years. When the final season of the Clone Wars was first airing, a lot of people were worried that LEGO might have not produced sets based off of that, and thankfully they were rectifying this issue in 2020 by releasing this particular figure. I really love the facial detail, which thankfully does not have the horrendous styling of the previous Clone Wars minifigures, and instead elects to have a much more realistic design that fits in with any other Star Wars character, and any other LEGO minifigure for that matter, which is something I really do appreciate. I also like the amount of detail on the front and back of the torso. Removing the headpiece here, you can see the two different alternate expressions, as well as the slightly glossy and shiny silver and gold printing on the front and back of the torso just makes this figure feel a little bit more special. And while this figure does reuse some older molds and still probably could have had a lot more detail than it has, I am fairly happy with the way it depicted the character, and I'm certainly very happy this is appearing in much more sets such as the more recent, cheaper Star Wars Duel set that just released this year. But with that, we can now move on to our number 9 pick. And coming in at number 9, we have a minifigure from the LEGO Marvel Superhero series. In 2020, the Black Widow movie was supposed to release, but surprisingly enough, this minifigure is not actually based off of that movie. Instead, the figure is loosely based off of the Avengers video game, as well as sort of the comic-inspired tie-in sets that aren't quite the MCU, but honestly could function just as well as being MCU-like figures. And this figure really blew me away, because as you can see here, despite it being just basically a standard figure, it's one of the only Black Widow minifigures we've ever gotten that actually has full-on arm printing. And that truly elevates the design of this minifigure above really any version of the character we've gotten before. LEGO certainly did not need to include arm printing on a figure like this, and it certainly wasn't expected because typically for standard superhero minifigures, they do not have arm printing. But for this one, they decided to go the extra mile and actually include arm printing for this figure, which I think really makes it stand out. and the rest of the printing is not too bad either. Sure, the head is basically pretty generic, it's kind of the same head we've been getting all these years, but the torso itself has a great amount of detail. I love the way the red Black Widow belt logo really pops on this figure in particular, and the gray mixed in with the black and some highlights of silver and gold really make this stand out from pretty much any other figure. This is probably hands down one of, if not the best, Black Widow minifigures LEGO has ever done, and again, I really appreciate this initiative to actually include detailed figures with arm printing in standard retail sets, and not make it something exclusive to, say, the larger sets, or something exclusive to the collectible minifigure series. So well done, LEGO, and I sure hope we get more figures like this in the future. But with that, we can now move on to our number 8 pick. A minifigure that surprisingly is from LEGO City, which typically doesn't even have that much interesting minifigures, but this time we had to make an exception. You see, for 2020, LEGO City introduced the LEGO Divers lineup, introducing a fantastic new dual molded element, which honestly could fit right at home even in LEGO Space subthemes, because this helmet just looks really good overall. Sure, it makes a great scuba diving helmet, but what I really love about this figure and the helmet in particular is just the high amount of different applications you can get out of it. It could be some sort of deep space exploration team with the lights on the top functioning as headlights. It could be some sort of underground miner's helmet, underwater helmet. Really, the possibilities are endless. And I really do hope that LEGO will choose to recolor and remold this element in different colors because it's just a cool looking sci-fi-like helmet in general. Imagine this helmet cast in, say, light gray and transparent yellow, or even black and transparent yellow for like a Neo Blacktron figure. I just really hope this gets reused in some sort of collectible minifigure series because the helmet alone is really good. Beyond that, the rest of the figure is fairly basic, which is why it's kind of lower on this list. The dark blue and red printing is definitely a unique color scheme for divers, but it isn't really something that stands out too much. Really, the star of the show here is honestly that excellent dual molded helmet component, which again, I'm really hoping will show up in future LEGO minifigures, just molded in different colors. With that, however, there's honestly not too much else we can say about this figure in particular, so we can probably move on to our number 7 pick. And coming in at number 7, we have our first minifigure from the LEGO Ninjago lineup. For Season 13, Master of the Mountain, Ninjago sent our heroes deep within the mountains of Shintaro and gave them some knight-inspired attire to match. Now, I specifically chose the Zane minifigure for a few reasons, and mostly because I think that this is a great blend of what makes Ninjago special, as well as theming a minifigure to the particular subtheme. You see, this is essentially just Zane's Season 11 Secrets of the Forbidden Spinjitzu outfit, but with some armor detailing added on, and the armor detailing is added in places that make a ton of sense and feel very realistic. For one, despite Zane typically having a silver and white color scheme, I think the gold really makes the figure stand out, and while I was skeptical at first at how well the gold, silver, and white would look on the figure, I think it provides a really great contrast. And one really interesting aspect is the amount of detail seen on the side armor patch for Zane there. I really love the medieval fantasy-like detailing of the embroidered swirls on his armor, just feels very realistic to me and something that really makes sense for a knight-like armor that he added on top of his existing suit. The shield itself is a fantastic lion print that really could be used for just LEGO castle applications, and I love the introduction of 2 brand new molds, the shoulder armor, which was later on used for actual castle minifigures like the Black Falcons, as well as the helmet, which is a great blend between the traditional ninja hood as well as a knight's helmet, featuring some dual molded detailing with the white and gold, as well as actual physical slits in the armor, which feel very realistic. Now, once we actually remove the armor, I actually really do appreciate the amount of detail and inclusion the designers actually thought of when putting this minifigure together. Of course, it's mostly covered up by the armor, but as we turn him to the back here, you can see that a lot of thought actually went into where would Zane put his light blue headband when he's not wearing it? Well, maybe he just ties it around his back. You can also see the shoulder pad continues along the side there, which is just a great attention to detail and a great character design because it really does feel very realistic to me that this is a character who was wearing a particular outfit and just decided to put armor on top of it. We got stuff like this in Ninjago in the past with the battle damage outfits going in from Season 8 to 9, but this is the first time we've seen it in more recent years and it works really well. There is one issue that I do have that really isn't the fault of this figure alone, but I do feel in particular that the more recent, very angry Zane face just doesn't really fit the character. Sure, there are some moments in the show where he does get very angry, but if you want to display him without the mask on, with the port on the back of his head, it just feels very uncharacteristic to have an incredibly angry expression for Zane. And it's something that they've been using since Season 8, and I really do hope that they actually do make a new face for Zane sometime in the future where he at least has a more neutral or serious expression, just not extremely angry. But honestly, those are only my two major complaints, and with that we can now move on to number 6. And coming in at number 6, we have another entry from the LEGO Star Wars line. This is the 501st Clone Trooper. And the main reason why this particular figure is on the list is because it represents a pretty significant milestone for LEGO and LEGO fans in general. You see, for those of you who aren't aware, there was a fan campaign to create a 501st Battle Pack, and LEGO responded by giving us 501st Clone Troopers in 2020 for the first time since 2013. And I think that's just a really cool thing that fans were able to basically vote a set into existence. And it's certainly a set that seems to have proven very, very popular. Now, there are a few somewhat controversial changes to this figure as compared to previous versions, which is why it is a bit lower on the list, although I do think I generally am fairly happy with the overall design. First of all, if you look at the design for the clone troopers in the show, particularly the 501st troopers, you may notice that they have this blue shoulder pad on the top of their arms, but the blue coloring doesn't really extend all throughout the entire arm itself. Now, back in 2013, when LEGO first made the 501st Clone Trooper, they decided to solve this issue by just coloring the entire arm in blue, which wasn't quite right. Now they're doing the entire arm in white, which also isn't quite right. And really, this is one of the figures where I actually feel like printing on the side of the arm would have been absolutely necessary to make this figure the most accurate. It would make total sense to actually just print the little bit of blue on the shoulder. I think that LEGO definitely has the technology to do it very well. They seem to be okay with including more and more minifigures with prints on their arms in standard retail sets, as we just saw with Black Widow. Now, if only they could do it for the 501st Trooper here, because that is really the main thing I feel is significantly missing from this particular figure. Other than that, though, everything else is basically an improvement. I am a big fan of the redesign of the Clone Trooper torso to be in the fully animated but also realistic style, as well as the printing on the legs is really nice to get. And what was a great surprise was seeing a brand new, more realistic, fleshy, nougat-colored head assigned for the Clone Troopers, more accurately reflecting the skin color of the actual actor for Jango Fett, which I think is a great direction for these minifigures to take, and one that I really do hope they continue with the Clone Troopers, and something that it seems that they actually are continuing. So really nice to get a brand new color for the head there, a brand new face print as well for Clone Troopers, and all in all, just a great minifigure that came from a fan initiative. Moving on from that though, we can now jump forwards to number 5. And coming in at number 5, we have a very, very simple minifigure, but one that was a long time coming. And that is the DK book exclusive Orange Classic Spaceman. This is basically just your standard classic spaceman, but in orange. And the reason why it is so high up on the list, and this may be a controversial choice, is because I just am a big fan of classic space. Again, this list is just my personal favorite and minifigures I consider to be the best of 2020, and I always think it's really fantastic that LEGO gives us new recolors of classic spacemen. This figure is really great in the fact that it uses the brand new mold introduced for the LEGO Movie 2 to kind of mimic the older style of LEGO helmet, bringing it back into the vintage era while fixing the problem of the neck strap being too thin. We are getting the air tanks in orange for the first time, the helmet for the first time, and of course that classic space torso in orange for the first time. What was really great about this figure is that LEGO actually made it available for a short period of time on bricks and pieces, meaning you could have called in and ordered them, which is exactly what I did to gain a small army of orange classic spacemen. And while this figure is nowhere near as detailed or as extravagant as some of the other figures on this list, I just really like what it represents, that LEGO is continuing to honor what came before, to honor the vintage lines, and give us new colors of classic LEGO minifigures. But with that, we can move on to our number 4 pick on this list. And for number 4, we are returning to LEGO Ninjago and taking a look at the Skull Sorcerer. Now, the Skull Sorcerer was the main villain for Season 13, and this is a fantastic minifigure design. First of all, I really love the dual molded hat and helmet combo for the face shield there. It just looks really menacing and feels like something out of Japanese mythology, just something completely different for Ninjago. It's not a design we've really seen before, and I really love the usage of the skirt element to really just give this figure a lot of gravitas and menace to him in terms of having the design on the cloth of the robe really continue on downwards. Just feels like a necromancer or some sort of evil sorcerer, and I think the design language comes across really well. One thing I really like is the inclusion of the Ninjagan symbols on the top of his robe there. Really like the two strips of symbols bannering all the way down his chest, as well as the large symbol on the front with the green and lime tassels. Just a really cool design in particular. Another really nice thing that came with the minifigure is the Skull of Hazadum. This is a really great recolor of the Skulkin head mold introduced for Ninjago Legacy back in 2019. It is in the spring yellowish green color, which is a fantastic accessory for the sorcerer himself. And while the bat wings have been around since Legends of Shima and do feel fairly simple for this figure, I do think they actually work. And of course the wings used in the show were a lot more detailed. I think for the minifigure itself, this is just alright. Removing all the accessories, you can take a look at the face underneath, a very suitable and fitting face for the Skull Sorcerer himself. And while I do think that this is a really great villain design and a great character design for a villain in general, I do think that they definitely could have made him a little bit more accurate to the show, or maybe vice versa, made the show a little bit more accurate to the figure. While I do understand that bringing in the likeness in the show isn't necessarily a good critique of the figure itself, because they are technically meant to stand alone, the figure in the show just looks so different, particularly in the mask, that this figure unfortunately is just really inaccurate. And I really would have loved to see a more accurate printing on the front of the mask, which would have been really interesting. But just ignoring the TV show itself, I just think this is a fantastic villain and character design in general, and that's why it is so high up on this list. But with that, we can now move on to our top 3 best non-collectible minifigures from 2020. And at number 3, we don't really even have a minifigure per se. This is, I guess what you would call it is a microfigure or baby figure. This is the child, aka Grogu from The Mandalorian. And this is pretty commendable for a few reasons. LEGO specifically stated in an interview that they actually rushed the development of this character because they were not told about Grogu or his inclusion in the Mandalorian show back when Lucasfilm was still producing the show itself. The secrecy of the child was so kept under wraps that LEGO was not informed that this would be a major character and major merchandising opportunity for the show, and so for 2020, LEGO rushed to capitalize on the hype and have this on store shelves as fast as they could, and I'm very impressed with the work they did. It is reusing the LEGO baby minifigure torso, which I think is a great use. It definitely makes a ton of sense to use the baby figure piece for this character, but of course it uses a brand new head sculpt for Grogu himself, which looks absolutely adorable. LEGO head sculpts for uncanny alien-like creatures can sometimes be a little hit or miss, and sometimes can really veer into the uncanny valley, which is why I'm very happy with the way this particular head sculpt turned out. It just looks really great, very accurately reflects the on-screen counterpart while still retaining the LEGO charm, and just is an adorable headpiece in general. I really do love the child minifigure. I'm glad they're including him in so many different Mandalorian sets because it is a figure that a lot of people do want, and I'm just overall very happy with the figure in general. One minor complaint would be that the printing on the torso obviously does not extend the entire way. This is probably due to the fact of how the figures are actually produced. They can't actually have the mold stamp or the printing stamp go even further past that point on the torso because of the way the hands technically overlap on the torso printing area, so it definitely is a technical barrier that LEGO is yet to overcome, but I'm fairly happy with it. It does feel a little awkward how the printing just kind of cuts off, but it doesn't bother me too much, and overall, this is a fantastic mold sculpt for a little minifigure or just little baby figure for the child Grogu. And with that, we can now move on to our number 2 pick on this list. And coming in at number 2, we have the star of the new Monkey Kid line, which launched in 2020. This is just simply Monkey Kid himself, or one of his many variants. I didn't pick any particular one. He does have a ton of different variants from the Monkey Kid sets and show himself, basically just different iterations on the outfit and face, but I just wanted to pick this one in general because I think that this is an excellent character to lead a brand new original LEGO theme, featuring some of the best printing we've seen on any original LEGO theme yet. You see, Monkey Kid features dual molded legs with the red and black, as well as side printing on the legs. If I didn't know about this theme, I probably would have assumed that this is some sort of collectible minifigure, because it's very, very rare that LEGO minifigures get this kind of detailed treatment, much less for original LEGO themes. I don't think Ninjago ever got dual molded legs outside of maybe stuff from Bricktober packs, and certainly very rare to get printing on the sides of the arms and legs outside of, again, exclusive minifig packs. This Monkey Kid figure appears in almost every single MK set, which I think is a great initiative to give kids a fantastically detailed minifigure accessible in pretty much any MK set. You buy a Monkey Kid set, you are bound to get this amazing minifigure. And I think in general, it's a great figure design as well. The keyed orange or flame yellowish orange jacket across the white is printed very well. Of course, the red pants with the black boots looks really good. And I love the cloud logo on the side of the pants, as well as the white printing on the black, which surprisingly turned out really well. He also introduces 2 brand new molds, or technically 3 if you count the staff. The headphone piece, which goes around the neck, which I could do with or without. It's not my favorite piece, and later iterations of Monkey Kid did not include this in favor of a hood, which I think was a great choice, but it's an interesting new figure mold nonetheless. The hairpiece is dual molded to have a red headband, which looks really good, as well as some printing for the MK design on the front of the headband. And of course, the staff itself is using the longer lightsaber hilt element to have a much more elongated drum lacquered gold staff. All in all, I think this is a great way to make a protagonist for an original LEGO theme. He has a lot of character behind his expression, a lot of stories that could be told about this character, and just an impressively high amount of detailing throughout, especially for an original LEGO theme. But speaking of original LEGO themes having fantastic minifigures, it's time we get to our number 1 pick for my personal favorite, and in my opinion, the best non-CMF minifigure of 2020, and that is Nima Reem, aka the Harbinger from LEGO Hidden Side. Now this is a minifigure that blew me away when I first saw it. LEGO Hidden Side introduced a brand new dual molded smoky ghost trail element, which looks absolutely fantastic. I love the look and feel of how organic this piece looks while still keeping within the LEGO DNA and the LEGO style. Of course, this also brings back the armor piece introduced for Nightwing from the LEGO Batman movie, which is a piece I never thought LEGO would actually bring back, but here it is. It looks really great, really fits this character, and what's awesome is that you can actually remove all of these pieces and still have a great looking figure on its own. Despite the color scheme for the figure being primarily black and gray, which typically is not that interesting of a color scheme, they managed to include a lot of really interesting details that make this just a great fantasy-inspired minifigure in general. The use of the aqua light blue really makes the figure pop to me, and I love the way the head is printed such that there's a little bit of silver behind the eyes, which really makes the eyes glow and sparkle when you shine the light directly at them. Of course, the dual molded ghost trail element is really what makes this figure stand out. I am so happy that LEGO is including this piece in different colors for different minifigures across different themes, whether they be licensed or non-licensed, like Mysterio and Nia, because this is just a great piece to have in general, and it's also great to see that Nightwing armor piece being brought back as well. This figure is covered head to toe in printing from the top to the bottom. Even the toes themselves have printing. And all in all, it's just a great design for a villain, or maybe not necessarily a villain, or a misunderstood antagonist for the final wave of LEGO Hidden Side, which was honestly a pretty underrated theme that had some pretty fantastic minifigures like this one.
Alright, and with that, we have summed up the best non-collectible minifigures of 2020. Again, just my opinion, and I want to hear yours, so let me know down in the comments below. Did I miss anything? Do you have any of these figures? And if so, which ones are your favorites? I hope you enjoyed this top 10 video, and definitely stay tuned to Duck Breaks for even more videos like these. As I mentioned, our next one will be on the top 10 best collectible minifigs of 2020. Then we'll go to 2019, 2018, 17, and so on, all the way backwards in time. And of course, subscribe for even more LEGO news, reviews, discussion, and analyses coming your way very soon. Thanks, and bye-bye for now.